How does public service strike work in Canada? More than 150,000 federal public officials, represented by the Canadian Public Service Alliance, PSAC, went on strike on Wednesday, April 19, marking one of the largest strikes in Canadian history. PSAC is one of the largest unions in Canada, with over 100 unions representing over 4 million workers in both the private and public sectors. Nearly 30% of Canadian labor force has joined unions, which is much higher than France, the United States, or the United Kingdom, where worker union participation rates are slightly higher than 10%. Workers who join unions cover industries from public officials to teachers, construction workers, nurses, journalists, professional athletes, and more. The PSAC nationwide strike was carried out amidst inflation and demands for salary increases, bringing back the long-awaited strike action in Canada. What are unions and what do they do? A trade union is an organization composed of employees from a specific industry, or company, aimed at promoting the common interests of workers. After joining a union, employees can negotiate collectively to negotiate favorable employment terms. Once the negotiation is reached, a written contract called a collective agreement will be generated, which will specify favorable terms for a period of time, such as wages, scheduling, and benefits. The soaring inflation and stagnant real wages have always been the primary issues of trade union negotiations, but the remote work arrangement brought about by the COVID-19 epidemic is also one of the focuses of the trade union. On average, union members earn more per hour than non-union members, but in the past 5 years, the salary growth of non-union members has far exceeded that of union members. In 2021, the average annual wage growth for union members across Canada was 1.9%, while the average inflation rate for the year was 3.4%. What is a strike authorization? In the negotiation process of reaching a collective agreement, both parties will negotiate. A common negotiation tool used by unions is strike mandate, which can be achieved through voting by union members. By voting in favor of strike authorization, union members expressed their support for the demands of their negotiating group and entered a legal strike state. Authorization and threat of strike do not always mean that employees will strike, as they may exert pressure on employers to make more concessions to avoid engineering or work stoppages. If no agreement is reached, as PSAC is currently doing, the union may continue to strike. After failing to reach a new collective agreement with Ottawa, PSAC began a strike on April 19, which has been legal for a week. PSAC Chairman Chris Aylward said at a press conference on Tuesday, April 18, "Our issues at the negotiation table are still unresolved. We haven't received a temporary agreement. Our 155,000 members of PSAC will be on strike starting from 12:01 a.m. tomorrow." What is a strike and how does it proceed? Does the union need to provide notice before the strike? If no agreement is reached and employees decide to strike, the law may require them to provide notice. Unions governed by the Canadian labor law are required to provide 72 hours of notice to employers, but unions governed by the Federal Public Sector Labor Relations Act, including PSAC, do not require prior notice before a strike. Can workers receive compensation during a strike? Striking workers may not receive wages from their employers, but they may receive bucket pay from the union. During the PSAC strike, workers must raise signs on the picket line for 4 hours a day to protest in order to receive a daily strike wage of $75. During the entire strike, workers must scan a barcode at a certain location on the picket line to receive their wages. How long can a strike last and how will it end? What is resumption of work legislation? The strike continued until an effective agreement was reached between the union and the employer, or the government intervened to force workers to resume work. In order to end the strike, the federal and provincial governments can pass resumption of work legislation to force workers to end the strike. Unions and workers who continue to strike after the resumption of work legislation is passed may face fines of thousands of dollars, and powerful unions may sometimes bear the fines of workers. Last November, Ontario passed resumption of work legislation in an attempt to end the strike by the Canadian Public Employees Union, CUP, threatening to fine workers $4,000 per day of work stoppage and $500,000 per day to the union. The result was a huge uproar, with CUP only ending the strike of its education workers after Governor Ford promised to repeal the legislation. Who can participate in the strike and when? Workers who have not joined a union are not allowed to strike in law. Workers with trade unions can strike, but they cannot strike outside the collective bargaining period, nor can they strike without holding a strike vote. Some necessary positions, such as medical staff, power plant and water plant workers, or law enforcement and firefighting personnel, are not allowed to strike. Although some workers in necessary positions were prohibited from striking, they still exerted pressure on their employers in other ways. For example, the police in Montreal had been wearing substandard colored cargo pants for 3 years to protest against the reduction of pension. According to the union, the PSAC strike has caused approximately 120,000 Treasury Board employees to leave their jobs, while the other 47,000 positions are considered necessary and employees will continue to work. An additional 35,000 Canadian Revenue Service staff members will participate in the strike. Strikes that occur outside the legal framework will still occur and can gain public support and attention. Illegal strikes are often referred to as wildcat strikes, where workers are often ordered to return to work by the labor committee of their institution and may face fines.